History remembers him as a philosopher king, but few know how much he suffered in silence. Torn between love and virtue, between pleasure and purpose. This is not a tale of power. It's the story of a man who fought himself and won. Rome, 2nd century AD, a world of silk, wine, and endless temptation. Emperors had everything: beauty, slaves, luxury. Yet Marcus Aurelius walked among them as if none of it existed. While others chased pleasure, he wrote in silence, reminding himself, "Control your mind, or it will control you." Marcus Aurelius stood alone in his imperial chambers, the marble floors cold beneath his sandals, the towering mirrors reflecting not just his figure, but the weight of an empire. His reflection stared back at him, weary eyes, a furrowed brow beneath a heavy crown that symbolized dominion over men, yet offered no dominion over the self. He traced the contours of his face with a finger, as though hoping to touch the truth within. "Even emperors are slaves," he whispered to himself, the words soft but cutting. Slaves not to Rome, nor to conquest, nor to armies that obeyed his command, but to something more intimate, more insidious. The desires he could neither crush nor fully embrace. Marcus had seen senators drown in the indulgence of pleasures, generals fall to vanity, men of power decay beneath the weight of appetites they mistook for strength. Yet he had learned that restraint was a silent victory, invisible but enduring, like the slow sculpting of a marble statue by a patient hand. He moved closer to the mirror, and in the flickering torchlight, he saw every imperfection: the shadow beneath his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw, the quiet tremor of a hand that had held a sword in battle, yet shuddered before temptation. He breathed deeply. "Desire is a fire that burns the soul before the flesh," he thought, quoting no one, just the voice of the years and the wisdom etched into his mind. And in that fire, he would either forge his freedom or be consumed. The palace was alive with noise, laughter like bells, the clatter of goblets, the soft rustle of silk. Women moved gracefully between courtiers, their eyes sparkling with mischief and curiosity, offering smiles and glances like currency. Yet Marcus's gaze did not linger on their beauty. He observed them as a philosopher might observe a painting. Beauty admired but not possessed. Patterns of movement appreciated but not enslaved. The courtiers, sensing his detachment, whispered among themselves. "The emperor is stern," they said. "He smiles little, laughs less. Does he not know the sweetness of life?" Marcus caught snippets of conversation, the way women's voices carried over music, the way men bent their knees for approval. A faint smile touched his lips, not from amusement but understanding. "Desire," he wrote in the small journal hidden within his robes, "is a fire that burns the soul before the flesh." He could feel it in the air, the pull of attention and attraction, the hunger for closeness, the longing for touch. Others surrendered easily to it. He chose not to. In a quiet corner of the hall, his advisor approached, a man of learned eyes and calm demeanor. "Why do you never indulge Caesar?" he asked, voice low so as not to interrupt the music. Marcus turned, meeting his gaze with the steady resolve of a man who had faced armies and rebellion, but now faced a quieter, more relentless foe. "Because pleasure demands payment," he said softly, "and the price is always peace." The advisor nodded, understanding that words alone could not capture the discipline required, the constant vigilance of a mind that refused to be a slave. Night fell over Rome like a velvet curtain. Candles burned low in the palace corridors, their flames dancing against frescoed walls depicting gods and heroes, battles won and lost, and emperors who had faded into memory. Marcus retreated to his private study, a room lined with scrolls and codices, each one a testament to knowledge and thought. The emperor's sandals clicked softly on the stone floor as he approached a desk littered with ink pots, parchment, and quills. He dipped a quill and began to write, the scratch of nib against paper louder in the stillness than the echoes of clamor from the city outside. "I am tempted not by bodies," he wrote, "but by forgetting my discipline." The ink bled across the page like confession, a visual proof of the inner struggle that had defined his life. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear or fatigue, but from the intensity of the restraint required to govern desire while ruling an empire. Outside the window, the moon cast silver patterns on the marble courtyard, illuminating statues of gods who seemed to observe him silently. Marcus paused, letting the words sink in. He had conquered legions, negotiated peace, and quelled rebellion. Yet the greatest battlefield was always within. The quiet war against the impulses that promised pleasure but demanded the surrender of virtue. In that stillness, he realized that mastery of the self was both the heaviest crown and the most enduring. The candles guttered low, smoke curling in spirals toward the ceiling. Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, feeling the pulse of the city beyond the palace walls. Rome celebrated, unaware that its emperor wrestled with forces unseen, yet more formidable than any army. He thought of women, not as objects of conquest, but as reflections of the human struggle, embodiments of beauty that tested the soul's resolve. To admire without attachment, to feel without being ensnared, to recognize desire yet refuse enslavement, this was the essence of his philosophy. The journal before him, now full of lines scrawled in haste and contemplation, was a mirror as honest as any in the palace. Marcus whispered to the night, voice soft yet resolute. Discipline is the foundation of freedom. Pleasure is fleeting, but virtue endures. The fire of desire may blaze, but the flame of wisdom must burn brighter. And in that moment, as he extinguished the last candle, he felt the quiet triumph of a man who had conquered not kingdoms, not men, but himself. The grand hall of the imperial palace shimmered under hundreds of golden lamps, their light reflecting off polished marble floors, gilded pillars, and the polished armor of the emperor's guards. Musicians played softly in the background, their melodies intertwining with the chatter of nobles, senators, and visiting dignitaries. Every face seemed to glow with anticipation, every gesture choreographed, every smile a mask hiding intent. Among the crowd, a noblewoman stepped forward. Her beauty was undeniable. Dark, wavy hair cascading over delicate shoulders, eyes glinting with intelligence and curiosity, a smile that suggested knowledge of her power. She moved with the grace of someone accustomed to attention, and all eyes, even those of seasoned senators, followed her. Marcus noticed the subtle sway of her body, the way she tilted her head, the sparkle in her gaze. She approached him deliberately, aware of the unspoken rules of the court. The hall grew quiet as the noblewoman stopped before Marcus. A hush of expectation rippled through the assembly. Marcus's gaze met hers, and he felt the familiar stir of desire, a pull of the body, a call of instinct. Yet he smiled faintly, a smile that carried no invitation, no surrender. Victory over the self, he thought, is the only true conquest. The murmurs of the court faded as Marcus turned, not in disdain, but in silent triumph over the fire within. His advisor, standing nearby, caught his eye. No words were needed. Marcus had passed the test. The temptation of beauty had arisen, and yet he remained unbroken. Desire was present, alive in the air like incense, yet he refused to let it dominate his soul. Later, in the quiet solitude of his study, Marcus closed the heavy doors behind him. The room smelled of parchment, ink, and faint lavender from a ceremonial vase. The candles flickered, casting shadows that danced on the shelves stacked with scrolls and codices. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples as he recalled the words of his old Stoic teacher, Rusticus, who had once told him, "You cannot possess what you cannot control." The echo of those words resonated deeper now, against the backdrop of the feast, against the tug of human longing he had just resisted. Desire, he realized, was the mind's battlefield. To control the external world was an exercise in futility. The true victory lay within, in mastery over impulses, in the ability to recognize beauty and temptation without surrendering to it. Marcus closed his eyes, letting memories of his youth drift through him, the playful laughter of young companions, the fleeting encounters of fleeting passion. Rusticus had warned that the soul's corruption begins not with acts, but with indulgent thoughts. Marcus understood now, more than ever, that even admiration of beauty could seed attachment, and attachment could become a chain. He took a deep breath and opened his journal, writing slowly. True power is not the control of men, but the control of oneself. The body is fleeting, the mind eternal. Desire obeys only those who command it. That night, Marcus fell into a restless sleep, the shadows of his study lingering in the corners of his mind. In his dreams, he walked again through the gardens of his youth, where a woman he once loved stood beneath the shade of an olive tree. The scent of blossoms mingled with the warm summer air, and her laughter echoed like a melody he had almost forgotten. The dream was vivid, impossibly so. He felt the softness of her hand in his, the brush of her hair against his cheek, the pull of desire as raw as it had been decades before. A pang of longing struck his chest, a reminder that even the memory of passion could stir the soul. When he awoke, sweat clinging to his brow, Marcus reached for his journal. The ink ran like blood across the page as he wrote, "Even the memory of desire tempts the soul." Memory is a mirror of both joy and torment. Pleasure past is a shadow that haunts the present. He understood that desire was not merely external. It was a living force, coursing through thoughts, dreams, and memories, unyielding, insidious, and eternally present. Mastery of self required constant vigilance, for even slumber offered no respite. Morning arrived with the soft light of dawn spilling across the marble floors. A scroll fell from Marcus's desk, yellowed with age and sealed with a faded wax emblem. It was from a woman whose affection he had never fully returned. A letter of longing, of expectation, of hope. The delicate script burned with emotion, and for a moment, Marcus paused, fingers tracing the wax. "Attachment breeds sorrow," he whispered, recalling the words he had written in his youth. With a measured motion, he lit a candle and allowed the scroll to catch flame. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into the shadows. He watched until the paper turned to ash, a quiet offering to wisdom and discipline. He walked to the balcony overlooking Rome, the city alive with the chatter of markets, the clatter of carts, and the distant tolling of bells. He breathed in the crisp morning air, the memory of temptation already fading like mist. In that moment, he understood fully the stoic ideal he had long pursued. Freedom is not the absence of desire, but the refusal to be enslaved by it. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, conqueror of armies and master of philosophy, had faced a subtler foe than any general could deploy. The temptation of power, the seduction of beauty, the whispers of the heart, all tested him, yet he stood resolute. Victory over the self remained the only conquest worth claiming, the only crown that never tarnished, and the only empire that endured forever. The morning sun spilled golden light across the imperial gardens, illuminating marble statues whose blank eyes seemed to observe the world silently. Olive trees swayed in the gentle breeze, their leaves whispering secrets older than Rome itself. Birds chirped softly, filling the air with a calm melody that seemed almost sacred, a harmony for contemplation. The fountain at the center bubbled tirelessly, water glinting like shards of sunlight. Marcus walked slowly, the hem of his toga brushing against the cobblestone path. His mind was heavy with thought, the endless balancing of duty, desire, and virtue. The quiet of the garden offered him temporary respite from the empire, a place where philosophy could breathe without interruption. It was here, among the carefully tended flowers and silent statues, that he noticed her. A poetess, her dark hair flowing over a simple white dress, eyes sparkling with intellect and mischief. She spoke to the gardener, but her gaze met his, sharp, penetrating, unafraid. There was something different in her presence, a challenge, a test of both mind and heart. Marcus felt the stir of curiosity, not desire, yet not entirely free from it. Her questions, simple yet profound, were as disarming as any sword. She approached him along a marble path lined with rosemary and thyme. The air was fragrant, the kind of scent that seemed to awaken forgotten memories of youth, of fleeting passions, of moments that demanded nothing but presence. "Can one truly live without love?" she asked, her voice melodic but edged with sincerity, like a bell tolling through quiet air. Marcus paused, considering the weight of her words. Love, not mere infatuation or fleeting lust, but the deep, enduring affection of the soul. He observed her carefully, noting the intelligence in her eyes, the subtle tremor in her hands as she awaited his reply. "Love is sacred," he said finally, voice calm, measured, like the rhythm of the ocean. "But passion without purpose is poison. It can destroy the mind, enslave the heart, and blind the soul to virtue." She studied him for a long moment, as though weighing his words against her own experiences, her own desires. Marcus felt a rare stir in his chest. Warmth, yes, but tempered by the discipline that had guided him through countless temptations. As the day waned, they walked together along the shaded paths of the garden. Shadows stretched long over the cobblestones, wrapping the statues and trees in an amber haze. Marcus felt a subtle shift within himself, a faint tremor in the steadfast resolve he had cultivated for years. They spoke of poetry, philosophy, and the fleeting nature of beauty. She laughed lightly at a clever metaphor, and for a moment Marcus felt the pull of emotion. Not lust, but a longing for companionship, for understanding. The warmth returned to his heart, a gentle reminder that even the stoic mind can sense the pull of human connection. Yet fear followed swiftly. The closer he came to affection, the more he sensed the fragility of his discipline. He imagined the consequences: attachment, distraction, the erosion of the inner peace he had so carefully built. He scribbled later in his journal, "The closer I come to affection, the more I feel my discipline tremble. Even beauty, even warmth must be approached with caution, lest the mind fall captive to desire. Time, relentless and indifferent, moved them toward parting." The poetess prepared to leave Rome, her carriage waiting at the distant courtyard gates. Marcus accompanied her, his steps slow, measured, a silent acknowledgement of the emotional weight of farewell. He watched her ascend into the carriage, the wheels creaking softly as it rolled over the stones. She turned briefly, offering a smile that spoke of gratitude, curiosity, and perhaps understanding. Marcus did not smile back. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, of release. Even beauty, he wrote later in his journal, must be released before it enslaves the mind. Attachment is a chain, desire a fire. Yet the mind, disciplined and vigilant, remains free. He returned to the quiet of the gardens, alone once more, the fountain bubbling, the olive trees whispering. The poetess was gone, yet the lesson lingered. True virtue is not avoidance of beauty, but mastery over the mind's response to it. He felt no sorrow, only clarity. The heart may stir, the mind may falter, but the soul remains sovereign. The sun rose over the horizon, casting a harsh light on the Roman encampment. Soldiers bustled through the mud-slick streets of tents, the metallic clang of armor, and the distant neigh of horses forming a rhythm that echoed Marcus's own pulse. He walked among them, observing carefully, listening. Men spoke freely of their lives beyond the battlefield. Wives left in distant villas, daughters promised to others, fleeting pleasures sought under the guise of honor. Laughter, crude jokes, longing glances toward camp followers. Desire was ever present, a silent specter that haunted every corner of the army. Marcus's eyes scanned the rows of men, noting their discipline, but also their vulnerability. Even the strongest warriors, he thought, were no match for the unbridled hunger of the heart. The mind can steel itself for battle. The body can endure pain, yet the soul is often enslaved by longing. He paused by a young legionary sharpening his sword, the boy humming a tune of love lost. Marcus reflected, "The greatest war is not won on the battlefield. It is fought within, in the hidden chambers of thought, where passion tempts and fear whispers in equal measure." Night fell, heavy and quiet, settling over the camp like a velvet shroud. Marcus sat alone in his tent, candlelight flickering against the canvas walls. The wax dripped slowly, like moments of clarity melting into uncertainty. He took up his journal and quill, the tip scratching the surface with intent and force. "Man's greatest battle," he wrote, "is not with enemies, but with the thoughts that promise pleasure and deliver pain. Each desire, each longing, is a test of sovereignty over the self." He paused, listening to the distant sounds of the night, the occasional laugh, the shuffle of boots, the cry of a sentry. In this quiet, he confronted his own temptations, memories of youth, fleeting affections, the allure of forbidden comforts. Stoicism was not just theory, it was survival. His eyes wandered to the small chest beside him, containing letters, tokens, and gifts he had never accepted. Every item was a reminder of vulnerability, of the constant pull of the heart. Marcus shivered slightly, not from cold but from awareness. A soldier may survive war, but only the disciplined mind survives desire. For 7 days he abstained from all indulgence. No wine, no lavish food, no distractions. The tents grew hotter under the midday sun, the smell of sweat and leather clinging to every corner. Hunger gnawed at him, a quiet, persistent enemy that tested his resolve. If I cannot control hunger, he whispered to himself, eyes closed against the glare of the sun, how can I control passion? His body weakened, yet his mind sharpened. Thoughts of indulgence appeared like phantom images. A warm meal, a gentle touch, laughter shared. He allowed them to pass, observing without attachment, acknowledging without surrender. The mind, he realized, was the only battlefield where true victory mattered. He reflected on Rusticus's lessons, on the writings of earlier philosophers. Restraint is not suffering, but mastery. Temptation is the chisel, discipline the sculptor. By denying the body, he fortified the soul. By observing desire without yielding, he strengthened the self. Night returned, darker than the week before, heavy with clouds and the distant rumble of thunder. Marcus fell into a restless sleep, the candle snuffed by a sudden gust. In the haze of dreams, a figure emerged, younger, confident, mocking. You preach virtue, the shadow sneered, eyes gleaming with amusement. But you fear emotion. You deny pleasure, yet it waits at every corner, mocking your discipline. Marcus awoke with a start, sweat matting his hair, heart pounding. The memory of the vision lingered, sharp and accusing. He reached for his journal, quill trembling in his fingers. The war within, he wrote, never ends. Each day brings temptation anew. Each moment demands vigilance. The flesh may tire, the mind may falter, yet the soul must remain unshaken. Victory is not in indulgence, but in the unwavering gaze upon the self. He closed the journal, the candlelight flickering once more. Outside, the camp was silent, unaware of the inner battle that raged within the emperor. The true conquest, Marcus knew, was not of lands or enemies, but of desire itself. In the quiet of his chamber, sunlight filters through tall windows, dust dancing in the golden rays. Marcus Aurelius sits cross-legged on a cushion, a worn scroll unfurled before him. His fingers trace the inked words he himself wrote decades ago. Each line pulses with meaning, yet with every reading, he discovers a deeper truth. The soul, he whispers, must be stronger than its sensations. He leans back, eyes closed, absorbing the silence of the room. The distant hum of the city filters through the thick stone walls. Merchants shouting, children playing, chariots clattering across cobblestones. All of it is life's chorus, yet it feels distant, almost irrelevant. He realizes that philosophy is not merely observation, it is confrontation. To write is to wrestle with the self, to read is to face the consequences of one's thoughts. In these pages, he sees his own temptations, his past failures, the moments he yielded to fleeting pleasures. And he feels no regret, only the clarity of understanding. The body may seek indulgence, but the soul seeks mastery. Marcus sets down the scroll, and the sunlight glints off the quill. In reflection, he understands that restraint is not absence, but presence. The presence of reason over impulse, wisdom over instinct, self over seduction. He walks slowly to the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The air carries the fragrance of blooming roses, their red and white petals trembling in the gentle morning breeze. Across the garden, a young woman practices dance, her movements fluid, her beauty undeniable. Many would consider her a temptation, a distraction from duty. Marcus does not avert his gaze. Instead, he observes with the mind of a philosopher, not a man. A woman's beauty is not evil, he writes in his journal later. It is the mind's attachment to it that breeds corruption. The lesson is clear. Temptation lies not in the object, but in the desire it evokes, in the surrender that follows. He remembers times in his youth when admiration became obsession, when fleeting affection threatened the clarity of thought. Now each glance is a meditation, each interaction a test of understanding. To see beauty is not to own it. To be moved by it is not to be enslaved. The world confuses desire with possession, pleasure with purpose. Marcus refuses to be fooled. In a bright study lined with marble and parchment, Marcus calls his son, Commodus, to his side. The young boy, clad in a tunic, fidgets impatiently. Maps, scrolls, and wax tablets clutter the room, symbols of empire, power, and the responsibilities he is soon to inherit. Commodus, Marcus begins, power and desire are twins. One corrupts the other. To rule others, you must first rule yourself. Commodus laughs, dismissive, brushing aside his father's words. I will conquer the world, father. What need have I for restraint? Marcus sighs, watching the arrogance and innocence of youth. The lesson cannot be taught. It must be lived. One misstep, one indulgence without wisdom, and the soul is lost. Strength is not in conquest, but in understanding, in the quiet mastery over what tempts you most. The young prince leaves, unconcerned, yet Marcus continues his teaching in silence, knowing that lessons planted in solitude take root slowly. True understanding cannot be commanded. It must awaken within. Night descends upon the palace, shadows stretching across marble floors. Marcus sits alone, candlelight flickering, ink spilling onto fresh parchment. His quill moves with deliberate care, writing words that might never be read, yet each word cements a truth he has lived. There is no greater joy than restraint, he writes. It proves freedom. Freedom not from the world, but from oneself. Desire obeys only the undisciplined. The disciplined bend the world to their understanding, not through force, but through clarity. He pauses to gaze out the window, stars glittering over Rome like distant fires. The city sleeps, unaware of the subtle wars waged within its rulers. Marcus feels the weight of solitude, yet also its triumph. Pleasure may call, temptation may whisper, but the self, when disciplined, stands unshaken. He closes his journal, hands resting on the cover, as if feeling the pulse of his own philosophy. The night is quiet, the air still. In this silence, he discovers serenity, the satisfaction of a life lived in mindful control, of desires observed but never surrendered to. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, philosopher of the soul, understands at last. The conquest of self is the only victory worth achieving. All else is fleeting. The city of Rome bursts with life. Lanterns sway above cobblestone streets, musicians play, and dancers whirl in vibrant silks. Servants carry trays of exotic foods while courtiers laugh, glasses clinking in a symphony of indulgence. The air carries scents of roasted meats, incense, and oil lamps burning in gilded halls. Through this chaos, Marcus Aurelius walks alone in the palace courtyard. Rain begins to fall, drumming softly against his cloak and slicking the stone beneath his feet. The crowd continues unaware, reveling in pleasure as he moves like a shadow, detached yet fully present. The crowd chases pleasure, he muses silently, watching women dance, men boast, and children run freely in the puddles. I chase peace. Each step is deliberate, measured. Every smile around him feels hollow, every cheer distant. The world pursues sensation, yet he pursues mastery. Mastery over self, over mind, over desire. Lightning cracks across the sky, reflecting briefly in his thoughtful eyes. Rome celebrates, but he knows the cost of indulgence, fleeting joy, attachment, and distraction from the truth. While others seek the temporary, he seeks the eternal calm that comes from unwavering discipline. In the quiet of his private garden, Marcus pauses beneath an olive tree, water dripping from the leaves onto the marble below. Memories rise unbidden, the poetess from the garden long ago, laughter denied, conversations never fully spoken. Each recollection carries both sweetness and sorrow. Virtue is lonely company, he writes in his journal by candlelight, ink smudging slightly in the rain-soaked evening. He reflects on moments of intimacy, of companionship, now surrendered for a higher purpose. Each choice to restrain himself has come at a personal cost, yet he does not regret. He has learned that life's true satisfaction is not found in indulgence, but in integrity. The fleeting pleasures of love, laughter, and admiration cannot rival the enduring serenity of a disciplined mind. In solitude, he discovers clarity, a space where the soul can breathe and understand itself without distraction. The poetess's smile, now a memory, does not haunt him. It teaches him. The laughter he avoided does not wound him, it enlightens him. Marcus knows that to live authentically is to accept both joy and loss without attachment. Years pass, and old friends drift away. Some call him cold, others holy. Letters arrive with invitations to feasts, social gatherings, and political alliances. He reads them, eyes tracing the lines of affection and expectation, then sets them aside. He answers none. His discipline, once a tool, has become both armor and cage. He is protected from the world's distractions, but separated from its warmth. Courtiers whisper of his detachment. Children in the street stare curiously at the solitary emperor. Marcus walks among them yet apart, a man tethered only to his principles. He recalls conversations with philosophers, generals, and poets who once admired him. Time has changed everything. Admiration is now suspicion, friendship now distance. He reflects, understanding that true virtue requires solitude. To blend fully with the world is to risk compromise, to surrender the inner strength he has cultivated over decades. Yet there is freedom in this isolation, the mind unchained by expectation, the soul unbothered by flattery or judgment, the heart unenslaved by fleeting attachments. The cost is loneliness, but the reward is self-mastery. Night falls and Marcus climbs a terrace overlooking Rome. The city sprawls below, lights flickering like fireflies, rivers of shadow and stone. Above, stars glimmer in an ink-black sky, indifferent and eternal. He breathes deeply, feeling the cool night air fill his lungs. Even the gods cannot tempt the man who seeks nothing, he whispers to himself, eyes scanning the infinite sky. In this vastness, he sees the impermanence of worldly pleasures, the fleeting nature of admiration, and the transient whispers of desire. The stars remind him of perspective. Human life is brief, struggles are many, but the disciplined soul transcends them. He kneels, placing his hand on the cold stone, contemplating the silence. His journal rests nearby, filled with reflections, triumphs, failures, and lessons learned. Each page is a testament to the cost of virtue and the clarity it brings. The night is his companion, solitude his teacher. Marcus smiles faintly, accepting both the burden and the liberation of discipline. The world may never understand him, may never celebrate his quiet victories, but he knows the truth. Inner mastery is the only conquest that lasts beyond the mortal life. The room is dim, illuminated only by flickering candlelight. The heavy curtains sway slightly in the evening breeze, casting moving shadows across the stone walls. Marcus Aurelius lies upon a carved wooden bed, his body frail, his breaths shallow. The golden crown and purple robes of an emperor seem distant, unnecessary. They weigh less than the thoughts that have defined his life. In his hands rests his journal, pages filled with decades of reflection, discipline, and wisdom. Each smudge of ink, each margin note, carries a lifetime of struggle and self-mastery. He turns a page slowly, feeling the weight of memories. Battles fought, temptations resisted, loves restrained. I have lost everything, except myself, he whispers, a faint smile tracing his lips. His eyes, still bright with clarity, scan the pages. Friends, family, power, and fame, all have faded, all have been relinquished. Yet the one possession no external force could take remains intact, his mastery over desire, fear, and fleeting passions. Outside, Rome hums quietly. The streets are filled with life, unaware of the emperor's final hour. Marcus closes his eyes briefly, savoring the silence. There is no regret. His life has been a testament. To confront the self is to conquer all else. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches for a quill, dipping it carefully into ink. The pages await his last words. the culmination of a lifetime of thought. He writes with deliberate care, each letter a final lesson for those who will read after him. Desire is not evil, but surrendering to it without wisdom is death. He lays the quill down and gazes across the chamber. The walls, lined with scrolls and books, seem to lean closer, as if to witness his final insight. Marcus reflects on the countless temptations he has faced: beauty, wealth, power, and fleeting pleasures. Each one was a test, a mirror showing the depth of his discipline. He remembers the women of his youth, the laughter he denied, the poetry that stirred emotions he never allowed to consume him. All these were trials, shaping a mind that could see clearly and act with integrity. In restraint, he discovered freedom. In solitude, he discovered understanding. The candle flickers as his hand rests upon the paper, leaving the words to speak where his voice soon will not. The first light of dawn creeps through the high windows, casting golden rays across the room. Dust motes float lazily in the sunbeams, and the soft breeze carries the scent of Rome awakening. Marcus reaches for his copy of Meditations, worn and frayed from years of study and reflection. As his hand brushes the pages, they flutter gently, catching the light, a quiet, living rhythm, as if the city itself acknowledges his thoughts. He traces the lines with trembling fingers, feeling the wisdom of a lifetime condensed into words. Outside, the city stirs, merchants preparing their stalls, children running across the plaza, soldiers marching with purpose. Life continues, indifferent yet vibrant, a constant reminder that the world is bigger than any one man. Marcus smiles faintly, sensing the paradox he has lived. To rule the empire, yet rule himself first. To conquer desire, yet embrace the fullness of human experience with wisdom. A soft sigh escapes him, blending with the morning air. His mind drifts through decades of reflection, battles, political intrigue, solitude, and self-discipline. Every challenge has been a step toward understanding the human condition, not to control others, but to master himself. The camera would pan across the chamber, lingering on the scattered scrolls, the flickering candlelight, the quiet room that has been witness to profound introspection. A voice, calm, resonant, philosophical, echoes over the scene. He ruled the world, but refused to be ruled by himself. Marcus Aurelius, the only emperor who ever won the war within. Outside, the sun rises fully, illuminating the city of Rome in warm gold. Streets shimmer with life, unaware of the passing of a man whose internal victories shaped not only the empire, but the philosophy of countless generations. Marcus closes his eyes one last time, a serene expression on his face. He has conquered desire, embraced virtue, and found peace in solitude. His journal rests beside him, a bridge between mortality and eternal wisdom. The final shot lingers on the pages of Meditations, ink catching the light. Words of restraint, courage, and self-mastery seem to whisper, "The greatest battle is not against the world, but against oneself. And the man who conquers that battle conquers everything."